Right, hello Gary.
Hello, Guy. Have we ever said goodbye?
No, I'm wondering, was that the sort of hysterical laughter of despair?
Yeah. How long? I mean, the tour's been nearly 12 weeks now, hasn't it? So it's
Nearly 12 weeks. Yeah. But we're near the end. Although you mustn't think like that.
No, you mustn't.
That can affect.
Yeah, we're still on top form.
Yeah,
the gigs are getting better. The shows are fantastic. It's
the gigs have always been perfect. They've always been perfect. Don't say that, because then people who saw it at the beginning will think, well, hang on a minute, what did I see?
That's true, but that is true. But you and I know that the little things that really grow as a tour goes on are getting stronger.
That's true.
We are in Barcelona today. We after a long drive down from Germany, where we've spent
1,000 miles, about 1,000 miles we drove.
Yeah, where we spent the last week, and now we're in the very hot Spanish city of Barcelona, and it's going to be Madrid coming up in a couple of days, Portugal, and then back home.
And then home, yeah. So there it is. But today we have a fantastic, incredibly. God, if you want to feel like you've been lazy in your life, just look at this guy's career. Amazing polymath and sort of everything, really.
Polymath was the word I was after, because Nitin Sawhney is just good at everything, isn't he? I mean, he's a CBE. He's won 20 international awards, an Ivor Novello Lifetime Achievement Award. He makes his own solo albums, which are incredible eclectic mix of different world music. I know he doesn't like that term, world music, but music from different cultures combining together in a sort of electronica, really, at times. And he works in theatre and dance.
But then everything from like classical to Indian classical, everything. But yeah, then as innumerable film and TV scores as well, and even music for games, and a lot of teaching and a lot of being artist in residence at places.
Curator. What on earth is he doing talking to us?
Well, that's fine. Yeah, it probably won't last long.
But let me just.
Oh, he's also he was my bandmate very briefly.
Yeah, played in Pink Floyd.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's the only time I've ever been sort of noted as a member of Pink Floyd. So he's actually been in Pink Floyd for as long as I have.
For the new single, which was for Ukraine. But also he's worked with Paul McCartney. He's worked with Sting, Jeff Beck, Annie Lennox. And Nelson Mandela. He's got some great stories.
Let's get him on.
Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Okay, guys, I'm ready.
That's a big tune for sure. I actually wrote that originally for Tina Turner.
Of course, I had gone and found Joni Mitchell down in Florida and brought her back.
I've listened to a few of them and they've been really good, man. I'm sitting in the back of the car coming into London. They're brilliant.
Thank you guys for still being around, still making music, still being into it, and doing this podcast. It's fabulous.
So great to talk to two guys that have done this.
Remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music.
You know this thing about the 10,000 hours of experience?
Oh, yeah.
Get good at something. When we recorded Arnold Lane, we'd done about 50 hours.
The Rockonteurs podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt.
Nitin.
How you doing? You right?
Are we going to see you?
Oh, hey, you were in the second. I look like this.
Oh, is that your studio?
It is indeed. That's Harry, who engineers with me every day as well. Yeah, we're in Brixton at the dairy.
So nice.
Yeah. So I've been here about 14 years or something now. Quite a long time.
You say the dairy. What is it? So I'm presuming that's a converted dairy.
I think so. I mean, it was. Well, I presume so as well. I've never really checked, but yeah, it was. It's been in here for a long time as a studio. Lots of Guy Garvey from Elbows next door.
Oh right.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of. There's a few.
Can you tell him we want to talk to him?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a good mate as well. He's a lovely guy.
He's a lovely guy.
Yeah, indeed.
We're in Barcelona. We're still on tour. We've been on tour for a long time. It seems.
Yeah, I've been watching you. You know, on Instagram, you look like you're having a ball. Actually, it looks really good.
We are, but it's hard and it's long. You know,
right.
In this offshoot of our band, Nitin, obviously, because you and I are bandmates.
Yeah, you know what it's like, Nitin, when you're away from home. It can be a little bit tiring, but we fortunately all get on. There's none of that band rift or separate camps or any of that. There's a real family spirit here, and we're all of like mind.
So important. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, I realised that many years ago that it's. I mean, in terms of touring, I mean, hopefully you get the best musicians as well. But I mean, it's really important that you all get on and that you gel as a group, as a group of people, and that you have empathy with each other and know how to be around each other, and it's always a journey. But I mean, recently with the band I've been touring with this year, it's just been an absolute joy. We just really all get on and have a lot of fun together, which is great.
Who's in the band?
You tend to have your musicians. Yeah, because your musicians tend to be all from very different backgrounds, don't they? Which is fantastic.
Which I really like. I mean, it's but I've had quite a few incarnations over the years, but I've stayed with certain people. I mean, like Arif Dervish has been playing tabla with me for 30 odd years now. In fact, I saw him yesterday evening as well. He came over to my place and we had a drink together. But yeah, it's really nice. I mean, all of the musicians have always been have been amazing. I mean, I've been blessed with incredible players, but also really good human beings who I think are on the same page as me in terms of our ways of looking at the world.
Yeah, I mean, while we're on this subject, because the ones who really stand out for me, I mean, Ashwin's, please pronounce it, Srinivasan, right?
Srinivasan, yeah, Srinivasan.
Beautiful, beautiful Indian flute. But Nicky Wells, incredible vocalist, who can mix all different cultures into her voice. I mean, that's what's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many great musicians. I mean, Ashwin, I met him, I think it was in 2002 or something. I was working on a film score in India, and I met him then and thought, oh my God, this guy's extraordinary. But he's a brilliant singer. He's a brilliant flautist. I mean, he plays the bansuri, which is a bamboo version of the flute. And but the thing that's different to the concert flute is that you can bend the notes. So he's got an incredible what we call in India meend. So it's actually when you're bending the notes and moving them around and having these kind of all the tonality between notes, can kind of be played with, and so as a result, there's a really fluid, beautiful, graceful way in which he works, and Nicky Wells also can do that. I mean, she spent time in India. She was in a place called Dharamshala where she studied a lot of singing techniques and so on, and she's very versatile. I haven't worked with her for quite a while because she's doing her own stuff now. She's got her own album. I think she's got a new album coming out soon. But she's I mean, but now the singers I'm working with at the moment, there's Shapla Salik, who's an incredible singer that I've been touring with, and Eva, who's fantastic. Ashwin plays with us. So yeah, it's I'm very blessed with amazing musicians.
I hope you don't mind, this might be a bit of a tangent, but I was just thinking, because there is that thing of the bending of notes and microtones is very, very priced into Indian music. Yeah. And I was just thinking, do you think there's a kind of link between that and the blues?
Exactly what I was going to ask. That's what to me.
Well, that's why we're the Rockonteurs. Yeah.
Well, the thing, actually, it's very interesting, all of that, because there is a certain rag. So the way in which Indian classical music works is there's lots of rules around it, but with the rag system, which is kind of like a more complex way of thinking about modality. For example, you have ways of thinking about the scales in descending and ascending ways, which are a bit like a melodic minor in a way, if you simplify it, in that you have the scale is different, ascending and descending, but also you have a lot of rules in terms of what you can play next when you are playing around with the rag. Now, rag in itself means colour, and it's based around moods and different times of day and the season. seasons. So you have 72 kind of main rags in Hindustani music, which is North
72?
Indian classical. Yeah, but they come from 10 thoughts, which are again like the modes, the main kind of basis. So there's lots of ways, but then also you have the Dal system, which is a very complex system of time signatures. So you have common time signatures in Indian classical music are like 10 beat cycles, which is known as Jap Dal, or you'll have Ek Dal, which is 12 beat cycles, as well as 16 beat cycles, Teen Dal. So you have a lot of these, and they're very mathematical, the way in which they work. So there is a lot to it. But when you were talking about the blues, I mean, there is a particular rag called Rag Malkons, which actually is a pentatonic scale, which actually has a lot of similarity, if you listen to it, to the blues, in the same way that if you listen to Rag Kirvani, which is like a harmonic minor, you can kind of hear it sometimes sounds a bit like Bach when people are playing it, because of that kind of flavour. So it's interesting, all these different ways when you focus on certain notes within a rag, then certain flavours come out.
But that connection with the blues, if you like, with the bending of notes, it offers up a yearning into instrumental music that really feels like a connection with desire and need that blues has, that those bending of notes in Indian music has, that even in some Eastern European music, which can often come out in, I know you've got this fantastic violinist that you play with, Anna Phoebe, that Jewish klezmer style of bending as well. There is a connection with that classical music and the English classical, British classical music and European classical music doesn't contain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating with all of that, because with the bending of notes, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's you hear this in lots of different cultures, and Celtic music has that as well. But it's kind of, it's a different flavour. I mean, with Middle Eastern music, for example, the way in which the notes bend is different, and even within classical music, what is known as glissando or portamento within classical music is actually quite different in terms of how you play that bend. So, for example, when I was working at the BBC Proms years ago, I brought in some string players from India, Carnatic violinists, to show
Indian string swoop thing is amazing.
Yeah, to show them how to move, how to play a glissando in a more Indian accent almost. So it's kind of it does differ. But I mean, I think it's it's fascinating, because you're right when you say that, Gary. When you talk about the idea of a yearning quality, there's this idea within the Indian rag system of always kind of yearning, not only for the sa. When I say sa, you have sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, which are the actual the degrees of the scale. So do re mi fa sol la ti do. So it's kind of the same thing. But if you take that, you have the kind of, you always have this yearning to get to the root, in the same way as you do if you're moving around in jazz and you're moving between 2-5-1s. You always have all cadences. I mean, there's always this idea of trying to get back to the sa, but also mathematically as well with doubler players, they're always trying to get to the one, to the first beat of the cycle. So there's a yearning quality there as well. So, for example, you'll have this. You'll have, if I clapped it out for you now, if you have a 10-beat cycle, which is known as Jap Dal, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you have that going on, you can have mathematical patterns like which will repeat 3 times, landing on the 1. So so you're hitting the 1 there on the so that's the 11th beat or the first beat of the falling cycle.
I just wanted to jump in here, because the connection is I think is useful in that you're talking about that kind of music wanting to always yearn to get to the root or to home, right?
Yes, or to the 1, to the first beat.
I see a segue here.
But there is, because your fascination, obviously, with and your new album, Immigrants, with travel, with not being at home, with maybe that yearning. Is there a connection there that you can make musically?
Definitely. I mean, and in fact, I think I made that connection most on a track called Homelands. And I talk about that track. Right, yeah. I mean, that was on an album I did a long time ago, back in the 90s, late 90s, called Beyond Skin. And on that, there is and in fact, we performed it at the Royal Albert Hall, many times. But my favourite time, I think, or my last two performances there were my favourite, where we actually had a choir.
Amazing.
And it's also string. And but what's really lovely about that is that I kind of brought in lots of different flavours. Like, I'm a flamenco guitarist, so I brought in some flamenco kind of flavours, and also Brazilian flavours in Portuguese, and also there are Cavalli flavours.
Stuff again has that almost Bulgarian, Eastern European feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I love that as well. I think that's amazing, and I love the way in which they move around notes. When they're singing this idea of constantly moving around the root or the harmonies, so it's never quite settled. I love that because it gives this quality of impermanence and this feeling of being constantly up in the air and having an expectation. So it makes you so much more interested. There's a lot more texture to the music for me when things aren't so clean and so kind of like, okay, here's the final chord before you've actually had time to kind of have a sense of playing with it, I guess.
There's a great old quote from Youssou N'Dour, which I think applies to you. And this was back in the 80s. I remember him saying this, always stuck with me. He said, modern music doesn't have roots, it has aerials.
Okay, yeah, that's very. I like that a lot. I mean, it's interesting in a way, because I always think about. I'd never try to bring things together, because what I think of is I think that you have. Music for me is like you have a palette, and you're trying to paint emotional pictures in a way through sound, and so it's kind of like, in a way, I look at the whole world as my palette, musically, and then but I don't try to contrive. I mean, that would be to focus on the form as opposed to what you want to say. So I kind of think, what is it you have to say in the first place? What's the idea? What is it you want to get across? And then you find the musical palette to go with that, and then and then it just emerges. It's because I believe in that idea as well. It's interesting what you were saying, because John Coltrane talked about the idea that improvisation is like a bird that you catch in the air, and there's other people like Panditji Ravi Shankar who talked about the idea of being a medium to channel the music that is all around us. Mm-hmm. And I love that idea of discovery and uncovering music that is actually already there. I mean, Gary, when you solo, you're not thinking about every note. When I've seen you play some beautiful guitar solos, and you're actually playing in such a way that you are connecting, you're communing with something, and I do believe that when I play, when you improvise, and both of you, I mean, it's as musicians, that there is something that is also taking over, because you're not in your head anymore, you're in a feeling, and where's that feeling coming from? It's coming from you, but you're also, like you said, like an aerial, and you pick up everything. You're picking up channels of possibility.
The whole of Western music has been driven by immigration. If you think about the Broadway musical, that sound of those chord sequences, that's an Eastern European music. We're talking about blues and rock music. We're talking about slavery and African immigration, and it's not something that, Peter Gabriel invented this idea, or Eno invented this idea. This has been the root of all popular music, this co-joining.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like in terms of blues, I mean, what was fantastic was when you had someone like Ali Farkaturi getting together with Rai Kuda. And it's like, I love that, because Ali Farkaturi, it's like hearing Malian players, or Beseko Koyati, who's an incredible Ngoni player, who came here years ago, and we had a great jam, and or playing with Umu Sangare. A lot of those Malian musicians, you hear that blues, which is in their playing. It's just intrinsic to the way they are, and it fascinates me, because blues and jazz and so on, they've gone through the American Revolution, and in terms of, and I mean musical revolution, in terms of how music has kind of really, gone through so many changes and transitions in America. I mean, the jazz scene in America has been incredible, and but you kind of look at those roots, and they are from many different cultures. They're from many different traditions, and I think it's very important to keep that perspective, because we can kind of just get locked into associating music with nationality in the same way that sometimes we do that with politics and with everything else.
Yeah, well, when I met you on the day we did Hey Hey Rise Up, I remember one of the first things I said was I'd recently just heard your Desert Island Discs, and I thanked you for reminding me of Shark Tea.
Oh yeah!
Instance,
oh my God!
Which I'd forgotten.
John McLaughlin,
which was
John
McLaughlin, but it was a fusion of like sort of jazz, music that was already fusion, then being fused with Indian music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, incredible. I mean, that band as well. I mean, with Zakir Hussain, who's just an incredible, legendary tabla player, but also El Shankar on violin, Carnatic violin, but Viku on clay pot. I mean, incredible musicians. But what was one of my greatest privileges, and probably one of my most humbling moments, was actually being on stage earlier this year with John McLaughlin when I was working with Anoushka Shankar, and we played a gig at the Royal Festival Hall. Yeah, the Royal Festival Hall, and that was really, really enjoyable. But I mean, to meet him,
what did you play?
I played guitar, and I had it. I kind of was hiding. No, it was. But yeah, I mean, you got someone like him.
If I was on a stage with John McLaughlin, I'd head for the piano.
I know. I was like, well, I wasn't. That was the thing. I was thinking, I presume I'm playing the piano. And they said, no, we're not using a grand piano there. I was like, oh no, you mean I've actually got to play guitar with John McLaughlin there? It's like, but he was actually very complimentary about it. There was a piece that we played of mine called River Pulse, which I played, and he came up to me, he said, that's a really lovely piece of music. I was like, oh my God, I just got complimented by John. But it's like,
how do you feel between the instruments, by the way? Between, is one of them your home, the piano or the guitar? Or
you know what, my home is more in terms of feelings and thoughts, and then music just comes from that. So I kind of think that sounds a bit pretentious in a way, but I mean, it's kind of, but I think for me, I was a classical pianist first from the age of 5, and that's what I trained in. But I then got into flamenco, and I used to play in the Van Halen covers band, which is quite fun when I was younger. And so I used to play all the tapping and do all that.
I was going to say, you can.
Oh, I could do all that. Yeah, I could shred. I could still play Eruption. Actually, I did that a few years ago in this studio. I could show you. But no, it's kind of so it makes me laugh, because all of that I used to do quite young. I used to kind of but it was kind of like I had that time, and I'd also play. I'd try and play along with Aldi Miller and Paco and John McLaughlin. I'd try and play a lot of those things. But I mean, but John McLaughlin's power and speed and inspiration with his playing was just insane. So, but incredible.
But
incredible
this your skills of flamenco and your skills on the piano. I mean, is it something you're constantly practicing, studying? Did you start?
Not enough anymore.
But did you? Is it all self-taught?
No. I did the grades when I was very young.
You did the grades. You started. And was that a love of classical music, or just?
Oh yeah. Totally loved it. Yeah, particularly the French. I mean, the French Romantics, more right. Debussy, Ravel, Satie. They were the people who really moved me. But then for the pyrotechnics and the kind of, I used to play Fantasy Impromptu and Chopin and all of that, and then third movement of Moonlight Sonata. These are the kind of things that get your hands moving. And also I used to.
It's the eruption of classical music.
Well, there you go. But also playing Bach 2-part inventions and all of that stuff. When I was very young. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I love all of that. But I guess guitar, I became totally fanatical about it. And as you know, Gary, when you play lead guitar, you check out every lead guitarist going. You're always listening to lead guitarists and just thinking, what are they doing there? How are they doing that? And listening for different techniques. And it's a you kind of totally fall in love with the instrument because of the things that you can do. Playing flamenco, you use every aspect of the guitar. You're whacking it with your fingers. You have all the you have all the different ways of playing. Getting rolls with your hands and getting all kinds of techniques together, which are strumming techniques with your fingers. All of that is kind of part of really enjoying the whole instrument as opposed to just being locked into one thing.
How did you?
Because you seem to have a Brazilian thing going on as well as the flamenco.
Well, that's because I think I love Brazilian. I loved bossa nova when I was young. Like the Tony Jobim. All of that stuff. I loved it because again, it's beautiful guitar chords and really lovely techniques, which really work well with the way in which the bossa nova singers. I love all that production. It's gorgeous.
How did you learn these
stuff.
as a kid? Were you doing piano lessons and flamenco lessons at the same time?
Yeah, at one point I was doing that, but I think at the same time my dad had an incredibly eclectic kind of record collection. My brothers were listening to Zeppelin and the Doors and all of that stuff, and Pink Floyd obviously, but I was also kind of listening to a lot of Cuban music through my dad, who listened also to all the crooners. He was into Nat King Cole, so I'd listen to Nat King Cole Trio and all of that, which always blew me away with I think one of the most underrated pianists of all time, Nat King Cole, absolutely brilliant pianist. And
but there was an interview you did about where you talked about this, like an encounter with racism, but for me there's also an interesting point about the music. You said how a music teacher came in to a remote school and you were playing a piece of Indian classical music, and he said, where's the music,
where's the sheet music? Yeah,
there isn't any. So he said that that doesn't count.
Yeah.
So you can't play that in here, which is an awful thing. In terms of racism. But I'm also fascinated by the fact that you're saying that Indian classical music, is there no notation at all?
Well, originally it was an oral tradition, but yes, it is notated now. There is.
But I mean, there's no native Indian notation for it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. There's
like what you've been describing earlier, it's so complicated.
Oh yeah, I mean there is. I mean it's like with what I was talking about with Sarigama Pa the Nisad. Those are called sargams. You write them down, and you'll have different ways of notating whether it's sharp or flat or on the note, and then the duration of the note. There are different ways of doing it. Right. It looks like Pitman shorthand if you look at it, but it's kind of but it is really it's a really beautiful way of notating, but really it comes from an oral thing, and it's the same with the tabla techniques. For example, what I was speaking earlier is one particular way of thinking about a pattern within a cycle, but that can be used in Indian classical dance as well as Indian class. So there is a great communication not only between musicians but also between forms. Like for example, a Kathak dancer, which is an Indian classical dancer, North Indian classical, they'll be able to communicate very clearly with the tabla player, with the percussionist, what they're thinking, what their footwork is going to do, and that's kind of a forerunner to the connection between flamenco guitarists and flamenco dancers as well.
Because they have their teacher there, don't they? Sort of shouting and egging them on.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why, obviously, you've been able to approach writing music for ballet, I guess, and for other dance forms.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting all of that because with Stravinsky, with Rite of Spring, he had very complex time signature kind of, or he was played with time in very interesting ways, or his own way. And
it's famous modernist ballet, isn't it? I mean,
that's right. And he got very angry. He got very angry with the ballet dancers because he didn't think they were getting quite right. And you wouldn't have. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you wouldn't have that same issue with the Kathak dancers with the tabla players because they're equally informed, and so that's what I mean. So they will understand each other's language, and that's a kind of different type of thing. But yeah, I love working with ballet and classical. I mean, I worked a lot with contemporary dance mainly with Akram, but I'm actually about to work with a ballet dancer who's actually from India, trained in ballet, but he's bringing in his own kind of heritage, and he's the son of a rickshaw driver, and but he's been training with ballet for many years, and I think Sadler's Wells are going to kind of be doing some work with him as well.
What about electronica? Because that obviously came into your life. There was a sort of, I guess in the 90s, there was what, gets called the sort of Asian underground scene. But, as though it was a separate entity. Was it? What role were you in that?
So I kind of always, I had a kind of... I had a mixed relationship with it, love-hate relationship in a way, because, when that term came out, I always said you can't really reduce cultural change to a fad or a fashion. This is about change in terms of how we look at society and look at embracing diversity and pluralism, So when you have... these terms, I kind of found it like, well, Asian underground, what is that actually? It's about a lot of young Asian musicians and artists trying to be heard and trying to get, and they shouldn't really be underground. They should
that's the issue, isn't it? Because that in itself said, right, you're not in the norm.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there a thing that you said you'd call up record companies and they just hear your name and they go, we're not signing any Bangra?
Yeah, exactly. That, and then that did happen, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, But it's kind of, my whole thing is that, that time was a really interesting time. In a way, it was kind of almost like a renaissance of young Asian artists in the UK. And I think there was a lot of amazing club music that came out of that. I used to DJ as well. And I used to DJ at Fabric, and I DJ'd in the 90s more at Ormonds and the End and places like that, and the face used to come down. Lots of it became very fashionable to kind of come down. Goldie used to come down. Bjork came down. A lot of interesting, cool people used to turn up at these clubs, and we'd play a lot of music that featured Indian classical music and blended it with electronica. And when I say that, we were kind of bringing in drum and bass influences mainly, but also kind of like different types of electronic flavors. So were you making
this music though?
Yeah.
Bringing to play. Right?
Yeah. So I got into programming in a big way. Back then, initially, I didn't really work with a computer. I was working with keyboards more that you could program and then hook them up to samplers like the Akai sampler, or you'd hook them up to.
The Akai.
Yeah, I know, this was the thing.
I get terrible. I get this like PTSD flashbacks from remembering programming those.
That's right, and people were using the Atari kind of you'd get C-Lab and Creator and Notator, all that stuff. So but what happened, Cubase? But what happened was over time everything started to evolve, and then I got into using Logic and stuff like that more, and then using analog gear in different ways. So it's kind of, I've always been programming for a long time, and I love doing that. And actually producing Jules Holland's album recently, I found myself kind of, because we were coming out of lockdown, or we were still in lockdown, I was using certain techniques at times in terms of programming to bridge the gaps where we couldn't get live players, to make it feel organic. And there are ways of doing that.
This is interesting.
So he's not in a room with a big band for Jules. It's not.
Oh yeah, it is. But what I'm saying is, at times it was difficult to get everyone back in again or whatever. It got quite tricky. But having said that, it came out really well.
When someone like Jules rings you up and says, "I'd really like you to produce my album," are you thinking, he wants me to bring certain, let's just say, Asian styles and things and eclectic things to the table, or are you're more flexible than that?
Yeah. I mean, for example, I wrote Lang Lang's part for him to duet with, because I have a classical background more, then he'd written one part, and I said, well, I can write that up for you, and we can send it to Lang Lang as a part. So I kind of wrote that up, and I mean, I worked a lot with classical musicians like Helene Grimaud, who plays with Daniel Barenboim. Yeah, so I've worked. I produced a couple of her albums and worked with her, and she covered one of my tracks amazingly. But I obviously had to write that up in a way that I knew would work with her technique, because I'm a classical player. I kind of wrote it up in a way that was going to work.
Is that a nice thing for you to do, to make yourself disappear? Do you know what I mean? Rather than you making the statement, is it a nice thing to vanish and just have?
Yeah, definitely. I like that. I mean, I'm not really. I mean, having said that, I'm about to do. I do one-man shows every now and then, and I used to do comedy with Sanjeev Bhaskar.
I want to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Okay, can you just give me 2 minutes? Because I had breakfast and I just need a wee.
Go for it.
All right. Well, no, I'll start the comedy because because there's such a link between these. I find it so fascinating. You started as a comedian because I do comedy. I've done a one-man show for about 15 years, and I was always really embraced by that community because most of them they either love music or were musicians.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, like Sanj
wanted to be musicians.
Yeah, Sanj is a musician, as well, and he's great. I mean, I didn't start as a comedian, but I did comedy.
But you, the first sort of commercial, professional venture you did was with Sanjeev.
No. I had already released albums and stuff.
I've researched all I can. Listen.
Yeah, no. But what it was we went to college together, and we used to kind of do review shows.
Was this in Liverpool?
No, so I studied law at Liverpool University, then I for my sins I studied accountancy. I qualified as an accountant of all things, and that's where I met Sanj because he was doing business studies. But he's always been a really good mate, and we just did that. Literally for me, it was just having a laugh with some friends, and I didn't realise it was going to get so big. It just kind of. It's been weird that way, I kind of my best mate at school was James Taylor from James Taylor Quartet, and so we used to kind of hang out together, and then next thing I'm kind of playing with him, and we used to tour together, and so I've been really blessed with lots of people I've known over the years who have actually gone on to be really successful musicians or artists or whatever, and I've known them before all of that kicked off, which is really nice because it's kind of I've seen them through that progress through that success, which has been great.
I know what you mean. I mean, just a few weeks ago we had Youth on the show.
Oh yeah. He's great.
Who I literally started playing music with at school.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was
Oh, he's brilliant. I love Youth. I mean, he's a really nice guy as well, isn't he? He's great. Yeah. I mean, he's incredibly. I mean, like I actually he asked me to DJ years ago at his house party, when I put out Beyond Skin. Yeah. So So I was there in the back garden, and he had some people coming around talking about all kinds of stuff to do with the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, this book that had come out at the time, and it was I think it was around the time that he was doing stuff with the Verve, and he said, I want you to DJ, but I just want you to play your album Beyond Skin. I said, you want me to DJ my own album for the whole of the time? He said, yeah. I said, I might look a bit narcissistic if I do that, and he said, no, that's what I want you to do. I went, all right, so all these people come up and say, what's this then? I'd say, yeah, this is me as well. It's like
Beyond Skin, obviously, 1999, that came out. You'd already done a few albums before then, but that really changed your life, that album. I mean, suddenly I would imagine your parents went, thank God, he's making some money. He's getting some recognition. I mean, just talk about that life-changing experience, because everyone knew that album.
Yeah.
It's so weird to me because it was the most personal thing I'd ever done, and I took 2 years over it. I mean, but I didn't know what it was. In a way, I kind of thought, well, it was kind of playing around with issues of identity, nationality, race, all kinds of things. But I was kind of I was doing
nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
There was that.
Well, the whole thing about that, and I remember going on Hard Talk and talking about this was, I mean. First of all, I mean, the whole thing about it was me using news footage or news clips as well as recording my mum and dad. So it was almost like I was making a collage or a kind of personal album, a kind of personal expression that was, and in some ways I didn't really care what people thought about it. I just needed to make it, and so my mum and dad are on there talking, but also it starts off with the Indian Prime Minister Vajpayee of that time talking very proudly about how he tested 3 nuclear bombs in the Pokhran Range in India, and then I bookended that with Oppenheimer, who was obviously in charge of the Manhattan Project with the nuclear testing. And he condemns his own creation in the name of Hinduism. And there you've got the Hindu fundamentalist prime minister of that time saying, isn't it great we got nuclear bombs? And then you've got a guy condemning it.
What you've said could be misconstrued. He didn't do it in the name of Hinduism. He did it using a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, isn't that?
No. What it was that what I'm saying is that Vajpayee was actually the Hindu fundamentalist leader. So he was.
I know that.
So what I'm saying is that
I just meant your wording.
No, the condemnation was from Oppenheimer in the name of Hinduism.
I know what I mean, but he wasn't condemning it in the name of Hinduism. He was
Oppenheimer did.
Quote.
Oppenheimer did in the
quote from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, it was from the Bhagavad Gita. So what he said was, I feel like no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, not in the name of Hinduism. That's correct. But what he did was he said, I feel like I'm become like Vishnu, the destroyer of worlds. But what was interesting about that is that he's quoting the Bhagavad Gita, but in a very emotional way and condemning it, is what I'm saying. But he's using Hinduism to do that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I not in the name of. But what I liked about all of that was it kind of exposed for me the fact that identity isn't necessarily synonymous with nationality or religion, because there you've got an American scientist who's talking about Hinduism to condemn his own creation of the nuclear bomb, and then you've got Vajpayee, who's supposedly the Hindu fundamentalist guy, who's actually saying, here I am very proud of it. And I kind of thought that was an interesting contradiction or paradox, and I liked that, because within, I mean, we all know obviously Pink Floyd, and I loved the fact, and I was hugely influenced by the way in which they would those concept albums. I loved all of that. That for me, when you had a great concept, I mean, for me it was just about connecting with narrative and stories and ideas, and I mean, lyrically, I mean, I always found it amazing to create journeys and to find different ways of expressing ideas. And really what I wanted to do was create a musical narrative or kind of sense of journey through an album, really.
Did those ideas inform the music from the start? Did they come first and then you sat down and consciously wrote every single chapter of that idea?
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, because what I wanted to do was I had in my head this idea of trying to express certain things, so I did divide it up into sections, like I talked about the album in relation to in relation to separation themes, and there were certain themes that emerge in certain sections of the album, and then a sense of longing, and then a sense of unity, and then a sense of belonging as well, and acceptance as well. So there were lots of different themes in there that I was kind of playing with, that I wanted to explore, and I find that for me is the best way, because otherwise, with the way I think, I can go a lot of different directions musically, and there's nothing to anchor things on. So I like to find, like Massive Attack were a huge influence that way. If I listen to albums like Protection or Mezzanine, there's an incredible mood and power and atmosphere through the whole thing, which is difficult to put your finger on, but it's very strong. But I can't say that those songs are connected in any way musically necessarily. They're quite diverse.
There is a sort of certain amount of didactic quality to, say, an album like Immigrants that's just come out, where you're trying to inform your listener, I feel, in a good way, about the issues that are on your mind. The slight difficulty nowadays is because books don't come, streaming doesn't come with lyrics, and often you use multiple languages and different languages on your music. How does that shroud too much the ideas that you're trying to get across?
So what I try to do actually is stay away from being didactic in one way, in that I don't try to tell anyone what to think. I try to be cathartic with the music. So if I'm working with certain artists, we'll kind of talk thematically about what we want to say, and what we feel passionately about, and then what will emerge might be something that is around a subject that we feel passionately about. For example, working with Ayanna Witter-Johnson, who's also on Jules's album as well. We were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and then this track just came out of all of that. But again, it's kind of her expressing her own experiences and feelings, and we want to keep keep it so it felt personal and emotional and human. But I think that's the thing. It's a tricky thing, because if you are dealing with universal issues, or if you even live in a politicized context as we do now, I kind of think almost everything you do is a political statement. I mean, it's like if
everything is art, everything is politics.
Yeah,
it's my favorite badge ever.
Exactly, and I totally think that, because everything is so politicized. It's polarized. The world is kind of, it's become politicized. So everything you say, if you ignore that, that's a political statement. If you kind of engage with it, it's, so whatever you do. So from that point of view, I kind of just think, well, where do I stand on certain things? What do I feel strongly about? And then that's where things come from. With a lot of people, it might be relationships or love. For me, it's actually about how I communicate or how I feel with the world.
And is it, because it is a thing that always runs through a lot of your work? Is it, growing up as the child of immigrants, is it a feel of always trying to find what is your actual home? This being your home, and a sense of otherness, or
I think that's something I realised over time, because it's like, I don't think I realised that was what I was struggling with until I got to Beyond Skin, really, because that was, for me, and the fact that I just intuitively wanted to interview my parents about their experiences and so on, and put that on an album. I just didn't question. I didn't have any reference for anyone who'd done that before. It was just something I really wanted to do, to connect it with my music, and it's kind of like, it is a sense of always trying to think about where is your home, because ultimately, I believe that your home is to be cliched, it's where your heart is, but it's kind of like ultimately where you feel most passionate, where you feel most connected, where you feel most empathic, and I think that can be anywhere. I feel now, I think as an older person, as we get older, I think we relax into ourselves and our identity more over time, and I think it's possible to feel at home anywhere. I mean, when you're on tour, guys, I mean, it's like, when you're traveling around, everywhere becomes your home, but you have to be relaxed in yourself for that to be the case, because I mean, otherwise you can feel really insecure with unfamiliarity, and I think it's about being secure in every situation, and that's an internal work that you have to do on yourself, I think.
What I think our listeners would also like to know is all the famous people you've worked with, who you've met. I mean, I love. I mean, we're going to have to talk about Paul McCartney. We're going to have to talk about you meeting Nelson Mandela, because I'm sure your parents were thinking, well, we really want him to have a career in pop music. You end up meeting Nelson Mandela on this journey, not long after Beyond Skin, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It was in 2001, and I mean, I was very fortunate to actually meet him in his home. To be invited over to his house, and literally, I mean, I as I said, in many times before, I was literally finishing the last page of his book, Long Walk to Freedom, in his garden, which is quite crazy. So I just literally, I
better finish this before I meet him.
Yeah, well, it was a bit like that. I was like, oh my god, I need to get to the end, and but I did, and it was. I think the last phrase is "We're free to be free," and that phrase ended up on the track "Breathing Light," which I put on the album. But it was more. I wanted to just. The thing about that journey that I went on was more about engaging with kind of people that I wanted to know more about and understand, from direct experience. So he was one of those people. I mean, Aboriginal people, where I spent time with them in Arnhem Land. It was amongst them as well that I discovered a lot, and then also spending time with Native Americans, kids in street shelters in Brazil, all kinds of things.
It was
amazing.
Were you filming?
Some of it, yes, we did film quite a bit of it. But in a way, it was, and obviously it was incredible to meet. But meeting Nelson Mandela, I mean, I was just blown away by his humility, by his openness, by his humour, by his ability to switch between being very, very chilled and funny and kind of almost like someone you'd kind of just meet, anywhere, to being this incredible statesman. When I started to interview him, and we switched on a recording device, which was a DAT machine, I think at the time, he suddenly changed in a totally understandable way. And the questions I was asking him, he was very formal about that until, and I've talked about this many times, which is one of the most amazing things, was when his PA came into the room and said, Madiba, which is what they called him, the president's on the phone to speak to you. He wants to talk to you now. And Mandela turned around and just said, how many more questions have you got to me? And I said, 2 or 3. And he just goes, could you ask him to call back in 10 minutes? Now, the thing that blew me away about that, I kid you not, I nearly cried in that moment. I'll tell you why. Is because I'd read in that book about his speech at Riviera, where he said, I stand for the struggle of all people, not just black South Africans. And I thought, yeah, you know what? This is what politicians say. They say all this stuff about, and it sounds great, but no one's a real egalitarian. No one really walks the walk of being a true egalitarian. People talk about it, but are they really? That was the moment where I thought, oh my God, the guy actually is. He actually is the real deal. This guy I'm looking at right now sees me, I'm choking up as I say it, sees me, some arsehole from London, in the same way as he sees the president. He doesn't distinguish. He's just going, I'm talking to this guy now. That's the person I'm talking to. I don't care, for whoever. It's like that. And that, for me, was what moved me in that moment. And it's kind of, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I literally couldn't get words out for a bit because I was like, wow, I never thought I'd meet anyone like that, and somebody who's been through so much. There's no one in my life who I've ever come across who's seen so much of oppression and power in one lifetime. A guy spent 27 years in jail, 19 of which were in solitary confinement, and there he comes out president. So you look at that and you think, my God, he's been here and he's been here, and he's still got that humility, and that astonished me.
What about Macca? What about Macca though? Come on,
incredible.
I love Mandela, but I love Macca too. How was your meeting? Suddenly you're in that boy is in a room with Paul McCartney. Tell us the story.
And he's continued to be actually, and I was very privileged to have lunch with him very recently. And he stayed in touch, and we've stayed. He actually sometimes we text each other as well. He's a lovely guy, but the first time I met him was back in the 90s when. And it's funny because it's connected to Youth as well, because Youth was doing the Fireman project.
That's the Fireman, that's right.
Yeah. So what happened was McCartney asked me if I would do a remix for the Fireman. And so hang
on, this is your first contact with him?
Yeah.
He just got in touch and said, would you do
He got in touch with my manager of the time. Yeah, then. So then I kind of said sure, and then but having said that, at that time I was working in my bedroom in a shared flat with Sanjeev Bhaskar and a few other people. They were like, it was a tiny, that I had one room. I had a tiny kind of bedroom at that time, and as money was not something I was kind of familiar with. So I was kind of in this room, and he calls me up in the morning. Literally calls me up and says, "I'd like to come over and see how you're working." I said,
"Is this McCartney?"
So yeah. I was saying, sorry. He goes, I'd like to come over. So, come over where? He said to your where you work. I said, no, I work in my bedroom. And he goes, yeah, I'll come over. And I was like, right. So I was like, amazing. So then I kind of go around and I'm telling everyone, and everyone's hoovering manically, and kind of we had like cardboard boxes all over the place. It's like we were living like students. I mean, it was a joke. And so we
need to get a mum, right? You need a mum.
I needed my mum. Should have got my mum. But what happened was then he comes round in the evening. I mean, and he comes up the stairs because someone let him in, and he comes up and he walks into my room, and he looks around, and there are several things that happen at once. The first thing is, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, I know so much about this guy I've never met before. I know about his history. I know, and he's so familiar, but I've never met him before. And that was the thing that blew me away, because I'd never met anyone as famous as that firsthand and known so much about them without ever having engaged with them. So that was the first thing that struck me. The second thing was that he said, the first words were, "Oh, I used to live in a place a bit like this." He said it was a kind of bedsit that I had, and he said, "I wrote a track called Scrambled Eggs there. I'll play it to you." And he sat down and played Yesterday and sung Yesterday on my guitar. Right. So my first thing in my bedroom. So the first thing I've got is like I'm sitting there going, okay, this is definitely pretty. It's like okay,
that's Paul.
okay.
That's Paul trying to blow your mind, isn't it?
No, this is proof that we live in a simulation, that this is a simulated reality, because there's no way that could happen. It's like there's no way in any reality that could happen. So I'm sitting there going, okay, you got to pinch yourself several times. But I mean, obviously that was mind-blowing, and to actually have my guitar blessed by McCartney's hands, but also big, but interesting, because I was watching him because I know he's left-handed, so it's like he's playing, but it's beautiful. It's just amazing to watch him play and sing. So I kind of, anyway, he hung out. We went to a local cafe for a bit, I think, and we just got, I mean, it was just amazing. He just hung out for a while as if he was anyone else. And that was the thing. I was, again.
But that's the thing, surely Paul McCartney wants to do that,
Yeah, but you know what's
from time to time.
But what's amazing is how good his memory is, because you meet him years later and he remembers everything. I went to his sadly ill-fated wedding with Heather, and it's interesting because the way he communicates, he remembers everything of every meeting I've had with him, and he I once had. One of the incredible things was actually with David Gilmour, at McCartney's house, and David Gilmour started playing the saxophone of all things, and I'm playing the piano, and Paul McCartney's singing, and I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm jamming with Pink Floyd and the Beatles here. It's a bit of pressure on, but it's kind of it's amazing because he'd been to. One of my gigs at the Royal Albert Hall, and he came there. Actually, it was, I think, 4 days after George died, after George Harrison passed away, and he was there at the Royal Albert Hall, and it was just an incredible thing that he'd come that soon after. I thought he would. I was convinced he was going to cancel coming, but he still came, and that's what I mean. He's always been very supportive. He's always been very down to earth.
But how did you write together? You ended up doing a track together, didn't you? My Soul.
Well, this is the thing. So when I met him at his place, he actually started playing around in the wine glass and got a sound out of a wine glass. I said, "Oh, that's cool." I said, "What you should do on my next album is play the wine glass." I said, "I'd love to just say Macca on wine glass." And he said, "Oh, I like that idea." So
that's how the intro to Shine On You Crazy Diamond was done.
Oh, really?
It's wine glasses.
Ah, I didn't know that. Oh, I love that. Oh my God, it's one of my favourite tracks ever. That guitar solo.
Anyway, sorry,
oh my God, that guitar solo was one of my most the biggest influences. Anyway, but yeah, with so he did that. He played, and he said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I was thinking, is this going to happen? So then he did. He turned up at mine, but obviously. Not to play the wine glass. He had his bass, and we wrote a track called My Soul together, and recorded that at my house then, which is where I was living in Wandsworth Common. But again, he just hung out for the day. And just was lovely.
How did you write together, though?
Well, I just pretended I was John Lennon. But no, it was kind of... But yeah, I mean, obviously, the thing is, you will be writing as I write with anyone else and talk to... I just have conversations and then something emerges. But yes, you will have this moment where you just kind of like, everything slows down and you go... I'm in the same shoes as John Lennon or whatever, I'm writing with McCartney, so you do have this moment where you kind of think, oh shit, and you can't, you kind of freeze for a bit. You're thinking this is quite crazy. But yeah, I mean, having said that, it was just, he makes you feel very relaxed and very much like, he'll just talk to you as a human being, and that's the thing. Great people do that. I mean, David Gilmour does that. Anyone, people that you meet, who are kind, secure people, will talk to you in a way that actually shows empathy. And that's what you engage with, is the empathy, I guess, rather than anything. Rather than, I mean, as well, you guys know that there are people you will meet who will come to your concerts or whatever, and you realise they're looking through you at some kind of version of you that they have in their heads because they've always loved your music, or they've always whatever, which is lovely in one way, but they're not really talking to you as the real person who's standing in front of them. And at the end of the day,
an irrelevance. Who you are is an irrelevance.
Yeah, because they've had this relationship with a projected version of you that they've created in their heads through engaging with your music. Which is all good.
Which can be bad as well. There can be a very two-dimensional version of you that they
very much. Yeah, it can be terrible.
I know. Guy, you got deep into the John Hurt album yesterday. Didn't you?
I wanted to ask you about the Last Days of Reason.
Meaning. Last Days of Meaning. Yeah.
Last Days of Meaning. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Because it's these fantastically that sort of, I don't know if this is Beckettian vignettes. Almost, it's kind of redolent of Krapp's Last Tape or something.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because obviously, I loved Samuel Beckett, and I was a big fan of the Theatre of the Absurd.
I'm a huge fan of Beckett. I think it's one of the things that drew me to it. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Also, musically, it's fantastic. But it's,
thanks.
Well, tell us about the journey of that. I mean, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's this beautiful album which has, between some of the tracks, there's these reflections from John Hurt, who's this character in a room.
Yeah, weirdly called Donald Meaning, and if you look at the front cover of it, it looks a bit like Donald Trump. So it's quite mad. I've no idea why I called him Donald Meaning, but anyway, the thing is that so I kind of created this character, and I'd seen John Hurt play the main character in Krapp's last in Krapp's last tapes, but
he was crap in Krapp's last tape.
Yeah, he was indeed. So I kind of so he came here, and I basically got to direct him effectively as the character, and he was amazing. He was very, very open, and we kind of set up quite a few microphones around him, and it was like just doing a radio play, and I really like this idea of creating this character. You know, I wanted to do something a bit different, and again, I had no agenda in my head. I just wanted to create something that I was feeling at the time, and so I kind of the character's kind of a bigoted, intransigent old bastard, really. He's kind of like sitting there, kind of mumbling to himself, and kind of sitting in his flat somewhere, just kind of like he's broken down every relationship he's ever had with his daughter, with his wife. I kind of created a whole backstory in my head. And all he's got is this tape. It could be from his wife, it could be from a daughter, it could be from his girlfriend, it could be, but it's from a woman who wants to really bring him back to a softer version of himself, because he's hardened over the years, and she sends him this music, and he's kind of listening to it, and he softens during the course of the
Well, it has got a lovely ending.
Right.
It does resolve beautifully.
Yeah. Well, that was the idea, and I guess it was kind of also about the power of music, and about the it was also before all of this, there's been, I mean, I won't go into politics, but there's been, as we have seen over the last few years, there's been a swing to the right globally, that I kind of, in a way, this felt like it kind of preceded all of that, and I kind of was aware that was happening at the time, and it's kind of
this. I spoke about it earlier. You were saying about it, your music. You don't want your music to be didactic, but nevertheless, do you feel that in the 20 odd years since Beyond Skin, that culture has shifted in a way that's more accepting, that's more multicultural?
In some senses, yes. In other senses, definitely not. I mean, if we look at things that have happened in the last few years under this government in relation to immigration and so on, and perception of refugees and asylum seekers, that's why I was so proud to be with Guy and with Nick and and David on that track, because of what it was saying, about valuing human beings.
I think that's one of the reasons that you were the first person that sprang to mind for them, was because you are such a great representative of all that is good about a sort of universal multicultural world.
Oh, that's kind.
I think really, Nitin, I'm sort of focusing on art and music specifically, and Asian music within our own British culture.
Yeah, I think things have. Yes, I think there is more of an acceptance of it in one way, but I think some of the promise of the 90s hasn't been realised. I mean, I don't hear enough Asian DJs on radio. I don't hear enough Asian music being played on the mainstream. What's happened is we have, say, the Asian Network and so on. But for me, I've kind of talked about that at times in terms of how it's resourced and so on as a kind of cultural apartheid in a way. And I kind of get frustrated by that because I would like to hear more Asian artists on mainstream radio. And, you know, I remember, I won't say which award it was, but I was talking to some of the representatives of a particular award, and I was saying that you know, it frustrated me there weren't more Asian acts or artists being kind of nominated, and they said, well, that's just, you know, we just go where the merit is, which kind of angered me because I said, well, when you have endemic kind of issues with racism and when you don't have enough representation, you actually need to make an effort to find those people. And, you know, and so we kind of had conversations about that, which I kind of think went well. And I do think there is a shift in terms of recognition of, you know, the fact that there is so many different influences in this country, you know, in the United Kingdom of different cultures. And I think that's when music's at its best, when we're kind of you know, YouTube, for example, is a great leveler. You know, I mean, like young people today can actually access music from any part of the world. And I think, you know, if I want to finesse a bulería, I'll kind of go to YouTube and find some of the best flamenco players around who can actually take you through different ways of playing a bulería. And, you know, and that's the case with any kind of type of music you're interested in. So from that point of view, I think it's a lot better now because of the internet, because of the fact that we have access to music from anywhere without having to even get out of our homes, you know. And from that point of view, I think our minds are far more open than they ever have been.
Guy, I'd like to finish off with the story of how you both of you ended up as members of Pink Floyd, because this has been, that record was amazing. But just take us through how that all happened.
Well, guys should talk first.
I can tell exactly when I first became aware of it. It was March the 23rd, and that's very easy for me to remember because it was my son's birthday. And I was in Manchester, where he's at uni. I'd gone up to take him out for dinner with some friends, and I got a text from David saying, "Are you around, and do you know where Nick is? I want to do something for Ukraine." That's the first I heard of it. And then I went round to the house and had dinner a couple of days later, and David played me this thing. You know, he's just from this guy Alexei, who I remember him playing with back in 2015. He'd done it. It was interesting because he'd been in trouble with the Russian authorities before. Boombox had, and in fact, he didn't play at the show at Coco's that David played at because he had trouble with his visa. But it was a load of Ukrainian and Belarusian bands who'd been in trouble with the Russian authorities. So there's been a long-running thing there. So that's how David knew him, but then he just came across. But then it was coincidence. He saw that video on YouTube of him singing "Hey Hey Rise Up" in that town square, and David was desperate for something because, you know, it's all very real to him. He's got his Ukrainian daughter-in-law and his, you know, half Ukrainian grandchildren living with him at the house all through lockdown. So it was very real and very visceral. They had a grandmother who was stuck in Ukraine. They were trying to get out, so it was really in his face. And so he had that idea of doing the track, and then he needed a keyboard player, and then I was just told, it said, we're getting Nitin Sawhney, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Right, tell us your story,
we
Nitin.
just met on that day. So now yours, Nitin.
Well, actually, I mean, for me, I met David Gilmour many years ago in Paul McCartney's garden at a party a long time ago, and I remember we really got on very well, and I had a lovely chat with Polly as well, and it was really nice. And I met him a few times after that, and he also came to a performance I did at the White Cube for one of Anthony Gormley's exhibitions as well, and so we'd always got on well, but I hadn't really stayed in touch for quite a long time until Jules Holland's album, and he's featured on one of those tracks, and so I kind of got to work on one of the tracks, and we had communication over email, and so Paul Loseby, who manages him and also manages Jules. Lovely guy. And I kind of, was chatting to him, and he was talking about things to do with Pink Floyd. And then out of the blue, David Gilmour calls me up and says, "Look, do you?" It was quite funny because the way he put it was, he said, I could hear him smiling on the other side. He said, "How do you feel about being an official member of the band of Pink Floyd?" I said, "Well, you're such an unsuccessful band. I don't know. I'd have to think about it." It was lovely that he thought of me. I felt really honoured, and I felt very privileged. And they're, obviously great musicians, and it's a very inspiring, It's surreal, though. Again, it's one of those many surreal moments I've had in my life, and obviously going over. And I don't think I grasped exactly what was going on until I got there. And I was like, "Oh, right!" It's because I thought there was going to be loads of musicians probably playing with Pink Floyd, and I'd be one of many. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I actually am." Like, it's just us.
That's the smallest, apart from when we used to do Astronomy Domini live, where it was just the four of us on stage.
Yeah.
That was with Rick.
Yeah.
This is the only time I've ever played with Pink Floyd as a four-piece. And it's it's the first time I've played with David and Nick together since 1990, whatever, although I've done recording. Let me tell you, as someone who's been around for 35 years, it was special.
Yeah, it's beautiful, absolutely wonderful, and actually very easy, and it was a lovely.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually a really lovely day, and I think it was nice. I remember us looking at each other, kind of going, "Here we do." I can't remember what it was, but it was like, you were cueing me for a certain moment.
Because it was brilliant. Because David constructed that song just from a free-form vocal.
Yeah,
and he had to retune a lot of it, and it's a fantastic chord structure that he came up with.
It's beautiful. I really like it. No, it's very clever, and that was something I was really impressed by. In terms of he must have tempo mapped everything, but then had to reverse engineer everything. So you'd have to kind of get the singing, which was just done without anything tuned, and also get it to work with a click track. And I kind of thought that was fantastic the way he did it.
Yeah, because he said what happens with the vocal. And because I gave the comparison, it's exactly the same as when you write on unlined paper. You know how you veer down.
Yeah,
he said that's exactly what happens with solo vocals. Is it just gradually tunes down?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Your involvement seemed perfect, really, because here's a very Western sounding band mixing music with Eastern European folk music. What's next for you? There's so much. I just want to ask a really simple question here, because you terrify me, Nitin, in that the capacity to work in different forms at multiple times it makes me feel so inadequate but inspired. Reading about your journey in the last 2 days, I've become so inspired by you in that what you can achieve and what you shouldn't be frightened of. Just talk me through a little bit of how you balance all those projects that are going on in your life.
Wow. Well, first of all, I've got fantastic teams of people who I work with. I've got Tina Arena, who's worked as my PA for. It's
not the Australian singer.
Now. By the way. Not the Australian. It was identity theft. She just nicked her name, and literally, I mean, she actually met her at Sony years ago and just said, "I like her name," and just changed her name to, which I found really funny. and that's brilliant, isn't it? By the way, I'm David Gilmour now. I'm
Mr. T.
But then also Harry, who you saw earlier on, who's engineered with me for a number of years. Fantastic teams, but and obviously live and so on. You guys know that there's so many people you work with who do so much work. But also, I kind of think she's fantastic. Tina's fantastic at sorting out time and scheduling. But I love the way I work now because I get to work in so many different ways, and it all cross-fertilizes. One moment I'll be working on, like I'm doing a one-man show. I'll have guests on it as well. at Wigmore Hall later this month on the 23rd of July. We've got, and that's a lovely thing to prepare for, because that's me just literally talking to an audience, but then playing bits of music in between and so on. And then, I'll be, working at the moment. I'm working on the Nancy Boys, which is a series for Amazon that Neil Gaiman wrote, who did Good Omens and so on. It's brilliant. And I'm working on another series as well. So I'm constantly doing that, and then some film scores that I'm also engaging with. So I'm doing all of that, but then I've got my new album that I'm going to do with Sony Masterworks that I'm kind of coming up with ideas for at the moment. There's so many different things.
Do you get yourself in a mess, though? Do you ever get yourself in like, oh my God, I've got to finish that thing for this producer, and it's...
You know what it is? It's like conversations. I mean, we're having this conversation now. You'll go and have a conversation with someone else, and what we've said to each other won't have any, won't have impacted or slowed you down in terms of the conversation you have about something totally different. And so, having said that, it might inform something you might say, because I might remember something Gary said or Guy said, and I'll think, oh yeah, actually I remember that. And it's the same kind of thing, I think. It's like if you're working lots of different ways, I find for me it's the most pleasing. I mean, writing for orchestras, I absolutely love doing that. And conducting the London Symphony Orchestra years ago with a score that I'd written was one of my highlights. Was actually to do that for me. With a 1.5-hour piece of music really that I'd scored for a Hitchcock silent movie. At the Barbican. That for me was a serious challenge, because I had to train with some people from the Royal Academy for ages, and then I had to, in terms of conducting. But but it's brilliant. They're all challenges that you rise to because you're thrown in the deep end, and I love that. I love being thrown in the deep end, really. So,
is delegation not a key talent here?
Delegation is definitely a big thing. You need to do that. You need to know when to do it. But I mean, for example, with orchestration, Ennio Morricone said he orchestrated his own work because of the fact that he thought his identity was hidden. Some of his identity would be in the way that he orchestrates. So I try to do that as well. I orchestrate my own material. But then, when you need to, if, for example, you're working on multiple things at a time, you might bring in somebody to kind of just, copyists to kind of help you get things done at a faster rate. But,
Morricone though, when he did music for films, his music was inspired by the amount of cloth that he was allowed to have. So if he couldn't afford an orchestra, then his inspiration would be the smaller. The trouble is nowadays everyone wants the most out, because you can get it all on a synthesizer, or you can get it all on samples. So do you try and ever restrict yourself as far as or inspired by the budget?
Exactly, all of that. I mean, you're absolutely right. Ennio Morricone, he used avant-garde kind of musicians, for example, with the spaghetti westerns, because they wouldn't actually give him the budget for an orchestra. But what was fantastic was it created those incredible scores as a result. But having said that, I think what I was saying earlier on about creating vocabulary or palettes to work with. I mean, it's with certain TV series or something like that, you might say, actually, we want this to be influenced by tango, because it's a flirtatious thing between two people. And so, it'd be great to get some elements of that in, and then we'll kind of think about how we do that in a way that's not going to feel too obvious, but it's going to kind of create flavors of that. Or we might, it's kind of like you discuss the vocabulary, and then you find and discover the vocabulary and try to figure out how to kind of make that work. And so I think that's a beautiful discovery. I love scoring for film and TV for those reasons, because it's always a different vocabulary every time. And you are restricting yourself according to the themes and the ideas of what you want to do, because it'd be very dull if every single score was just pure orchestra, because orchestras all sound great, but they don't give enough identity to necessarily the characters.
I did the score for two TV series back in the 90s, and they wanted, and I had this whole idea for it. When I went up for the first meeting, they said, we want salsa, we want Cuban music. And I worked out that it was, just through someone I knew, it was actually cheaper to fly to Cuba and use amazing Cuban musicians and do this whole thing legitimately than it was to use the kind of wedding band players that you would find in London. And it was also the most magical thing you can ever do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done that. I've done that as well. I've gone to, gone over to India, or gone over to different places to find musicians. But sometimes you can find some great musicians, around you in London. There are brilliant Cuban musicians, and there is also brilliant musicians from Africa and all kinds of places that you can kind of bring in. Luckily, I've got a good network of people who actually can put me in touch with certain people, and I also know a lot of great musicians from all over the place, thankfully. So it's great. And also nowadays you got bloody Zoom as well. So like for example, right. I did the Cheltenham Jazz Festival. I mean, I did it this year, but I also did it last year. Last year we had to do it on Zoom because of lockdown. So I did it with Ashwin Srinivasan in India, and just me on the piano and the guitar, and or it's just on the piano actually with that one, and we did the whole thing as a duo. Isn't
there a lag?
Yeah. So what I did was he recorded himself. So when I say Zoom, it was in the broadcast of it, in the streaming of it. Right. But what he did was, what was great on the first day of lockdown, I learned I taught myself how to use Final Cut. And so that I could do this, so that I could cut together, sort of different performances with different musicians. So that was really handy. And him being in India and playing Bansuri with me playing in my house was really nice. But to do it split screen and do it in real time, as in. What I did was I sent him the parts. There were a couple of things which he sent me, and then I put that together so that we were working with the click, and then literally it was very easy to kind of to look like we're jamming off each other and so on.
Nitin, it's been a total pleasure having you on Rockonteurs.
Really,
thank you.
We've kept you too long.
I hope this conversation, we can continue privately for many years to come, because it's been great.
Definitely, would love to. Yeah. Well,
really
same to you both. And it's great to see you both. And I mean, we need to all meet up for a drink or something like that.
I feel really inspired and kind of woken up by this.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely from two brilliant musicians like you guys. So that's very nice.
Thank you,
fantastic.
Sir.
You take care. Yeah. See you later. Cheers.
All right, mate. Bye. All the very, very best to you. Cheers, mate.
Oh, what an intelligent, wonderful spirit that man is.
Yeah, fantastic. But it's just an absolute force for good in the world and the arts. I mean, just, everything he does is great.
And I hope we've...
fantastic humility. I love that. Those stories he told.
I hope we've inspired people to go off and listen to some of his wonderful music.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it, and it's great. It's really, really rewarding. And it'll take you to all sorts of other places as well, because there's all the people he collaborates with.
Absolutely. All right, Guy. We have got one more before Rockonteurs to record before we finally hit the shores of Blighty.
Yep, and maybe have a little bit of a holiday.
Yes, I think so. So all the best. Thank you for listening. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from them.